Arrogant, throwing fits, ripping shit, tearing it, imperative. Then I'm killing this mic no matter where I live. These derelict rappers acting the fool, this embarrassing is flagrant. That's the nature of this entertainment, and we can't even change it. Guilty before arraignment, now the system tainted. But when we speak, they all laugh at us. And y'all wonder why I'm lacking trust. Try to fight a giant with attorneys that can back them up. That's church versus science, both sides start acting up. I'm late on my assignment, hopping up a mile high, climbing, obviously never silent. New alignment, I'm defiant, can I describe it? Used to describe it as a young graffiti artist. Before the beard, I always got carded. Hit every bar, even though my bar's been the hardest. The scars on my face, and I ain't always been the smartest. But I'll show you where my heart is. I said I'll show you where my heart is. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. I can show you where my...
The type of guy that would ride with the breeze. I'm higher than most people. I'm cold and icicle freeze. I'm liking to Mike Tyson. I'm a bison, a beast. I'm hot like Jamaica, like right by the beach. My pops is from a spot where they're fighting for peace. 8 years old out there watching people fight in the streets. All these sirens only make the violence increase. Yeah, we're still not loving police. It's that bright young American, nice, dumb, arrogant, tight on a mic, but he might need a therapist. Heart full of kerosene, head full of fairy tales. Said that you're my homie, you don't know me, but I know you very well. Roll back on some West Coast shit. This whole track is wetter than your dress code kiss. About to hit the track, running on some retro fit. I guess I'll lit, I guess I'll bitch, now let's go.
I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will...
Ladies and gentlemen, Tuesday. How's everybody doing? Welcome. Little sports nonsense and whiskey. Hanging with the boys. Pinky,
Hell yeah.
Robert, how you guys doing?
Oh, woohoo! Pinky's doing good, buddy.
Super.
I'm already winning some money on NBA tonight, so I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good.
I'm still relishing of the masterpiece that was Dune, so that was, excellent.
Oh, you just want to get right into it, Robert? Like I was going to hold on for a second.
I was just throwing it out there because it was amazing.
You know what, Robert? You say it so well. Speak so eloquently. Spoiler free. How good Dune is.
Dune is something you just have to see in the theater if you're a movie watcher. It is something that just is the visual details, the score, just the sounds. It was just immersive. It was like it got to the point where Pinky was like, Robert, how much time is left? We've been here for like ever. And I'm like, we got like 10 more minutes. We're almost there.
That is not why I was asking that question.
But
I was asking that question because it's been so long and I had to pee.
But no, really, it was awesome. Caleb, you need to figure out a time when you can, man. Go experience this because it's tremendous.
Bro, I told you, man. I'll give you some free babysitting. I'll come over. I'll bring the wife. She likes little kids. We'll run them around. We'll tire them out. You guys see the movie. You come back. You put them to bed. We're good, man. I'll even feed them too.
We'll see what happens.
It works. You've got to see that movie in theater. It is Pinky approved. As we've talked about on the show, I was not a big fan of the first one originally, and I am definitely not a big fan of that director. But like, this is definitely his like opus, like his masterpiece. It's fantastic, start to finish. It's one of the movies where once you're watching it, you don't realize how long you've been there. And again, my feelings around it was just like, I was asking Robert how much time's left because I really had to pee. I was like, man, I'm not going to make it. I want to make it. So, and the actors were great. The guy for me, Javier Bardem, I mean, he just had me.
The man of the internet right now.
I loved every single scene he was in. It was awesome. It was awesome. And, when they bring in, faith, religion, politics, it has all of that leadership. It's a fantastic movie. And you got to see it. Dolby. We saw it in the Dolby. I know Robert's seen it in IMAX as well. So he's seen it a third time as well.
I've
so.
seen it 3 times. And there were some changes from the book that with how they had to tell the story for Paul, I found it very acceptable. For some things, very curious how they are going to tell Dune Messiah from here. So overall, for me, 10 out of 10. Actually, I'm rereading the book again because it just got me so just re-engaged with the world and excited. So really recommend it.
Absolutely.
Solid.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep. So, I mean, that's really my big nonsense. I've been watching Shogun and Bad Batch, so those are also great. I know, Caleb, you're still catching up on some of that, but Shogun overall is also amazing. If you get the opportunity, get the chance to start checking that out since it's been rolling out.
Yeah, I'll be starting to watch both of those here in the very near future.
All right. I think Caleb, I know Caleb wants to talk some sports, and I know he wants to talk some college basketball. Let us know, Caleb. What are you thinking? He's silent.
So look, this is the end. This week is the end of the regular season. Okay. Duke, North Carolina play for their second time. They always play a home and home every year. Their second time is always the last weekend of the regular season. And then Pinky throws nonsense out like that to just blast across Rock Chalk's Pinky's team. But Duke, North Carolina, their second matchup, the last weekend of the regular season, kind of always it's that big red flashing light in the air that says, all right, things have ended, and now things are getting super serious because we're moving into those conference tournaments, which will all start next week. Winner of every conference tournament is going to get one of those automatic bids into the tourney, and then everybody else sits at large, and they hope and pray. They sit there and they hope and pray on Selection Sunday that they're going to see their name sitting on one of those lines against somebody else. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think this has been one of the biggest seasons of parity that I can ever remember in men's college basketball. It seems like every time there's a number one, they lose, like the next week. Now, some teams have gone back up to number one and then dropped back down and then gone back up and dropped back. Like the top 10 has been very, very flexible in the way it's been stacked up all season. There's been some consistency overall, but just the order in which those teams have sat have been kind of back and forth, if you will.
I think is Purdue still?
So they're number 3. So I was going to give you, I figured I'd give you the top 10 just to kind of give you an idea of what we're really talking about here. So Purdue started the season as the consensus number 1. They're now number 3. So you've got Houston at 1, Connecticut at 2, defending champs, Purdue at 3, Tennessee at 4, Arizona at 5, Iowa State at 6, UNC at 7, Marquette 8, Duke 9, Creighton 10. Baylor, Illinois, Auburn, KU, UK round out the next 5. So you got quite a few blue bloods up there. You've got some names that you expect to see up there. Houston's a newer name, but over the last, how long has Kelvin Sampson, I think is the coach's name at Houston. I can't remember how long he's been there, but since he's been there, he's turned that program around. They've been dangerous since then. No surprise that they're up there. UConn defending champs, no surprise. Purdue, look, and this might be crazy to say, okay, and I understand it. But I still think you look at all these teams I just named, and I feel like any of them could win this all on any given day except Purdue. I still feel like Purdue is a flawed team, especially when it comes to the tournament. And they're not much different than they were last year when they got bounced as a 1 seed. Now, regular season, Big Ten, slow pace, big men can play a little bit more dominant, very defensive minded. Those games are going to be a little more gritty. Depending on your style and your ability to bend and twist that style as needed within the tournament's parameters, you may or may not be okay come tournament time. Purdue doesn't seem like one of those teams that can kind of morph their style into something different if they absolutely had to, or completely force the other team to play theirs. I think while Zach Edey is a really great college player, he is the perfect example of somebody who's going to be a really great college player and have a NBA career that nobody knows about in the annals of those record books. Okay. He might play 10 to 15 years in the NBA. He might be one of those bench guys that gets 7 minutes, maybe none his whole career, but he'll always be around because he's got some fundamentals and he's a big dude, right? But he's slow. He is slow, and he's not a dominant force with these ridiculously insane post moves on the offensive end. So he becomes a liability to an extent come tournament time, where that pace of play can really get forced if you play a better team, especially, and I've said this last year and the year before and the year before and so on and so forth. Guard play is huge in the tournament. If you can have dominant guards that can force the pace of play and they can keep the other guards miserable on the other end, you're going to see those teams more than likely look at Sweet 16, Elite 8 runs, like 9 times out of 10. Purdue doesn't have a dominant guard. So you've got a big man who, come tournament time, can be a bit of a liability. You don't have those dominant guards. It puts them in a position where, again, out of everybody I named, I'm looking there going, all right, maybe UK doesn't have a real run. Maybe they don't really have a chance. They haven't been much all year, but you never know what those freshmen will do for Coach Calipari, right? Like,
I think Kentucky's got a shot.
Creighton's beat the 1 seed. They beat like the 3 seed and the 5 seed all in the same season. And yet they've lost to like 2 or 3 unranked teams, right? Like that's Creighton's season. So you just look at this and you go, man, there's some teams that can go on runs, but it's just weird because the more I look at it and the more I sit there looking at that top 15 or so, Purdue keeps standing out to me as a team that very arguably could end up on the 1 line and very arguably could be out in the first or second round again.
I'm already ready. I feel like I don't know what's going to happen for Kansas. We have lost to some really terrible teams, and then we've beat Houston, Baylor, Iowa State. Like, we've beat big teams and played like crap against some of the teams. You're like, how did they lose to them?
Dude,
so I have no idea what's happening in Kansas.
I'm telling you, that's been the college basketball season. North Carolina's got some losses like that. Creighton, UConn, like everybody just has these weird games. And like, look, Creighton
Purdue came close to losing on Sunday.
Yeah,
Saturday. They were playing the
22
Spartans.
22-8 on the season. North Carolina's 23-6. Houston and UConn are 26-3. Like, you look at number 10 having 8 losses and number 1 having 3. There's not a lot of separation there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's going to be a really fun tournament, and we're going to start really seeing what some of these teams' potential are starting next week when their conference tournaments start.
I mean, I don't put as much stock into that conference tournament because some of the teams that know they're already in don't really put in their best effort.
Oh, yes, they do, because that seed matters, Pinky. You're surprised. Now, some teams might come out flat. Some teams just might not show up when they need to, and the other team does. And we've seen that happen all the time. That's one of the things that makes the tourney the greatest sports competition in the world, in my opinion, because it's a one and done. It's not a series. Any team can win on any given day. If you come out and you don't show up on your best day and the other team does, you might be going home. And that starts in those conference tournaments because there's an automatic bid on the line. You win and you're in. You don't have to worry about somebody else leaving it up to their decision-making, right? And then you could have, let's say you're one of the last 4 out, as they like to put it. Instead of one of the last 4 in, you're one of the last 4 out going into your tournament. But you make it to the semis or the finals, That might take you from one of the last 4 out to one of the last 4 in. So while it might look like some of these teams don't care, don't believe that for a second, because it is honestly, it's a precursor to the tourney because of how coveted those lines are on those brackets. Those 1 seeds truly have a better chance at running to the finals. They just do. You start getting mucked down into those 5 through 12 seeds. We all know what happens with those games. That 12-5 is one of the biggest picked 50-50 almost lines for
That's
an
absolutely
upset.
true.
So
Absolutely true.
you want to try to avoid those situations. So like I said, we're starting to amp up to this. We're starting to get a little preview for certain things to start watching out for. It's starting.
And it's all next weekend is the conference championships, right? Kind of.
Well, they start
Thursday to
next
Sunday.
week. They'll go into the following week. Because like the ACC tourney, I think is like a week and a half, 2 weeks long. Like Carolina and Duke will have like buys for the first like 2 or 3 rounds. Because you're looking at, it's like 16 teams. Something like that. So some of them are big East, ACC. Some of those are going to take a little bit of time, but they'll start next week.
All right. Well, I'm already ready for the Jayhawks to break my heart, so I've prepared myself well.
I don't have a dog in the fight, so I don't think the Spartans are going to do jack. So
I was looking, where is Michigan State? Are they top 25? They're not.
Probably not. They haven't been good.
They're
in a couple
19
years,
and
man.
12.
Well,
Or
see, that's the
overall.
thing. 19 and 12, they've taken that and won like the Big Ten and then walked into like the Final Four. So
True.
I've never put anything past Izzo, but he hasn't had quite the dominant run since probably he hasn't had quite
Since
the dominant
Draymond.
team since probably Draymond's last team, probably
man.
about in that area.
So I've been paying attention to the Celtics Cavaliers game because I did have a bet on the game, which I won. And then I get $1 free bet for every 3-pointer. And
Oh man, this is actually a good game.
like it's 105 to 104. There was I don't even know what's happening now. It looks like there's a jump ball with 0 time left on the clock. I don't think they've updated it. It's crazy. I didn't think the Cavs win. Cavs win.
I told you. Moving into the NBA, shall we? Or did you have something else you wanted to discuss?
No, we move into that. Without Donovan Mitchell, the Cavs win.
I told you that's a good young core, man. Keep an eye out for them because they could do some scary damage. They're not somebody to take lightly.
That is
Now,
crazy.
That puts them. Let's just pull up the standings real quick. Why don't we?
You pull up the standings real
little
quick.
NBA.
I gotta. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna go out there. Nuggets are 6-0 since the All-Star break. Playing really good basketball. You're pulling up the standings. I was giving you time. I'm trying to help
but
out.
why would you mention that? We don't talk about those stats. You know that as a sports fan. You don't discuss the streak while the streak is happening.
Oh, I'm not
you know
worried
the
about
rules,
that.
Pinky.
They're gonna lose eventually. It happens.
You know the rules. You don't discuss the thing as the thing is going on with the thing and the thing.
This is not Fight Club, sir. We will discuss it.
Like, the streak is like the one thing you don't discuss when it's going on. I'm not superstitious with sports. I don't do anything else. But the streak, you don't discuss during the streak. You just allow it to be, and you talk game by game. Period.
I've had some good games during the streak. Whooping the Warriors. That was a good one. That made us feel good. Well, was there anything better than Saturday night?
And they whooping the Lakers?
So they didn't whip the Lakers.
Well, I mean, they showed up
it was
LeBron
a pretty
on
close
his
game,
night.
but they closed the game. And you guys saw the text. I was kind of frustrated. I don't probably watch as much LeBron basketball as others. When I watch LeBron play and I watch how bad the refs call Laker games, it's infuriating. It is just infuriating to watch.
That's how a lot of opposing fans felt about Jordan, though.
I mean, if you go back into that era, there's so many fouls that they could have called that they didn't. It's like it's a really weird conversation to have at that point. But
It's a different conundrum because it's different type of refereeing at that point because people play defense and people don't now.
I'm not saying there's similarities. I'm just saying, like, this is why I try to talk about eras on their own instead of comparing them per se. I do like comparing. Don't get me wrong. I always think that's a fun conversation. But I also like to kind of think about them as their own entities in certain situations because, like, you can't really compare, like, the 80s, especially those late 80s when they were just mauling Jordan. Like, it was literally like an ambush in the alley and, like, 6 dudes would thug jump you is what they were doing to Jordan. And they called it the Jordan rules when they started changing and not allowing people to do that, specifically the Pistons. And the Pistons were doing it to other people, too. It's just Jordan was finally a big enough name for the league to be like, all right, the bad boy Pistons aren't bigger than this. Because the bad boy Pistons were big. They won 2 championships, almost a third. So they were a really good team. Don't get it twisted. They could play ball. But
they just have sucked for the last 20 years.
No. Well, yeah, we're about there now.
I know my Detroit sports, but thank you.
Well, I still have trouble believing we're in 2024 sometimes.
Look, man, I'm sorry.
But no, you're right. It's been about that long. So, each era has its thing. Kobe was called differently a lot of the times. LeBron's called differently. I think we're starting to see, whether you believe this or not, I do think I'm starting to see a turn to giving Jokic a little bit more freedom and leeway on the offensive end when it comes to some of these things.
In a couple games, I would agree with you. In the Lakers game, we didn't have a player shoot a free throw until like 6 minutes left in the second quarter.
I'm not saying it's turned all the way. I'm not saying things are fair, all on the up and up just yet. I'm just saying I'm starting to see some turns. Okay, so we'll see. I mean, obviously the league is talking about wanting to address the lack of defense being played now. They've come out and said as such. So let's see what that has
if you remember
next year.
I like it when the refs are pretty consistent. I like it when they kind of let them play. Looking back to Game 5 of the NBA Finals in Denver versus Miami, that was an ugly physical game, and they let players get away with quite a bit.
You're going to see defense in playoff basketball. You just are. Now, it's not always pretty, but you're going to see it.
I just think having that more consistency of, okay, we're going to let some guys play. We're not going to call fouls every time someone touches someone. Was it egregious? Was it during the shot? Did it affect the shot? Like, I feel like they're just blowing whistles. I've seen ones where the guy goes into the basket, makes the layup, never gets touched, and they call a foul. And then guys go to the basket and get murdered, and they don't get the foul. There's just no consistency. But back to what was great about that win was, of course, ruining the Lakers' night. LeBron scoring 40,000, which was cool. LeBron actually had a pretty good game overall. He's still putting in a lot of work. Unfortunately, that team as a whole does not have they don't have Anthony Davis who gives a damn because he just disappears anytime he plays the Nuggets. It's crazy.
They've made some changes to make sure he's not as effective against them, for sure. And if there's a matchup in the playoffs of them again, we can break down exactly what that is because we talked about it a little bit last year, but I won't go into those details now. With all that being talked about, I think I heard a crazy stat the other day bringing up LeBron and his 40K that blew my mind, actually. The dude averages, if I remember this stat correctly, 27, 7, and 7 for his career, called the LeBron line, okay? Out of all the games this guy's played, he's never had his own LeBron line. The dude has never had a game where he's had 27, 7, and 7.
Huh.
And just thinking about all the basketball he's played and that being his averages, I just thought that was kind of one of those cool sports stats that you kind of go, yeah, that you would think that would have happened by now, right? Like you just kind of figured that would have added up to that. But no, apparently it hasn't. So I thought that was kind of cool.
So with that happening, my son and I were debating, and he made the comment that he feels like Luka is going to break that scoring record.
Ooh.
And I, oh man, I was like, he's on pace right now because he started when he's young. He's only 30,000 away right now. Again, LeBron's not done scoring, so we don't know what that final number is going to be. But I was like, you're talking averaging, it was like 2,300 points a year for 13 years into your late 30s, the way Luka plays. Ah, man, I don't know.
So the one thing Luka has going for him is he's not necessarily the type of guy that is high octane, fast paced in the sense where you're like, oh, that's a fast twitch guy. That's a high flyer guy where you tend to see more injuries in them. But Luka is a lot more physical than I think people realize.
He's very physical.
That can lead to injuries just as easily. That constant banging on the body can lead to injuries just as easily as the other things. So
Are we talking about Luka Doncic?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I just want to make sure I'm
him
understanding who this is.
Absolutely. So for him to get to 40K, I mean, you have to talk about so many things going right for him during the course of his career. Let's be honest. Like, there's rumors that LeBron spends $1 million plus easy on his body every year. Just on his body to stay in shape, to stay healthy, to be able to do what he's doing.
And I mean, that's
whether
chump change
you
for
believe
him.
He's doing, PEDs or some kind of non-traditional treatments that aren't allowed in America or whatever else you want to believe, he's still spending the money to take care of himself in ways that allow him to extend his career. So regardless of what it is, the dude's trying everything he can to be at the best of his game for as long as possible. And I respect that.
Absolutely. Longevity is a big.
Hell yeah.
For a lot of people, people are saying his longevity is what makes him better than Jordan. For some people.
And I think there's an argument to be made there. But I also think people, for whatever reason, continue to not want to talk about the 3 years Jordan spent in college and the 2 years that he took off.
And then he took 2 years before he joined the Wizards. So, I mean, he had breaks in there.
If we're talking about how many seasons Jordan played, yes. But if we're talking about like the span of the career, when it started, when it ended, what happened in between, those kinds of things, there's a reason Jordan is where he is. And so that's why I'll continue to say it. And I've been told by people close to me sometimes maybe I do this too much and I should maybe not do it as well as I do it. But I'm really good at compartmentalizing. So I can easily look at Jordan and LeBron and say, Jordan's the best basketball player that I've ever seen play. And I've gone back and watched as many highlights of other guys as I possibly can. I love doing that. So just from, and it's hard to compare those things, right? But just from every highlight I've ever watched, and I'm old enough to watch Jordan when I was younger and still remember it. I remember how in awe I was watching him grow up and play and win all those titles. So I do have those memories of myself, of Jordan, and then being able to compare his highlights to others and things of that nature. Greatest basketball player I've ever seen. I can say, though, that LeBron has arguably had the greatest career I've ever seen. What he's been able to achieve in his career may possibly be better than Jordan's, because by the time he's retired, he's going to have so many insane records, it'll be crazy. And then on top of, averaging a career 27-7 and things of that nature. But if you're talking about like one game and I need the guy to score me enough points to win that one game and elevate your team and those other players around you, whether he's making them better or he's just like, you're all trash and I'm just going to get even better than I already was. Like, to me, that's just Jordan. So, I'll differentiate. I'll start compartmentalizing. That's what you start doing when you watch some of these teams and decide, who's got those right pieces that they can move around when the times are needed to push them forward into the next round.
Well said. I've got one last thing before I give you the reins, Caleb. Talk about whatever you want. between when we were on last, the Thunder and the Spurs played. Wemby and Chet. What a game between those two. Spurs won that game, took down the Thunder. Those two dudes, like, they play like it's a playoff game.
Really good.
Like, they are must-see TV.
That could be a really good rivalry for years to come, actually, as things progress here.
And moving forward, that needs to be on prime time or Saturday. Or
Man, you hope so, right? You hope so.
Market that right.
I have already come out and said, and I'll say it on the podcast too, live. I was wrong about Wemby. I had come out and said I thought Scoot Henderson was going to be Rookie of the Year. I thought he was just going to be just lightning in a bottle. He has definitely struggled more than I thought he would. He's also had some injuries that have kind of stunted any of his progress that he's been making.
He also got into a groove before he got injured.
He's not playing terrible either. He's just not playing. I really thought, especially with Dame not being there now, that he would just be able to kind of shoot out of a rocket and go. Hasn't quite been that. He's not even in the conversation for Rookie of the Year, which I fully believed it was going to be him, Chet, and Wemby, and it was going to be fun to watch. But it is Chet and Wemby, and I do believe Wemby is the clear-cut favorite right now. But this is the only reason why, and I think people don't state this enough when they're talking about it. Yeah, Wemby is doing some amazing things, but I think if you put Chet on San Antonio and you put Wemby on OKC, you just switch them. I think you actually see very similar numbers produced by either one. And the reason I say that is because Wemby's the only dude on his team really that can do anything anyways. On either side of the ball for everything. And he can do everything, so he's doing it. And so you're seeing the numbers elevated a little bit because of that. He's not necessarily playing within a team dynamic. He is the team. Because there's just not anything else there, really. Whereas Chet in OKC is very much playing within a team dynamic. And watching him do what he does and be completely comfortable, by all accounts from what I've seen, being a backup role player to SGA and the Jalen boys at times, the Jalen Williams boys, and some of the other guys, depending on how the game's going, and he just kind of takes what's given and rolls with it every game, and then is solid on the defensive end. I think that's what you'd see from Wemby, too, if he was on OKC. Now, could you argue Wemby's better than Chet? Sure. So then would his numbers be a little bit better than Chet's on OKC and that team be a little bit better? Maybe. But they're second in the West, a half game back of Minnesota, tied with the defending champ Denver Nuggets. So could they really be that much better? So I think people are kind of missing the gameplay of both and elevating Wemby far and away above to where I'm like, no, I don't think it's like he's running away with it. I think he's the clear-cut favorite right now. But I don't say that in a way where I'm like, that couldn't change. You know, if he goes on a week or two where he really struggles, the Spurs really struggle, and his games just look really bad, and Chet all of a sudden has a couple 35, 40-point games with like 10 blocks and some rebounds, you could start seeing that conversation come back down a little bit. So I still think Wemby wins it in the end, but I'm just saying I could see that still being a conversation for some time depending on how things end.
That hype is he's done well living up to the hype, but that hype is at such a level. He'd have to get injured right now or just completely fall off a cliff. Because I mean, tonight he's got 10, 2 assists and five blocks and although he's got 5 turnovers, that's kind of the problem tonight.
So here's what people kind of forget. When the Spurs got David Robinson, they had some issues that allowed them to get him also because of his Army or his Navy service, that there were a lot of moving parts that allowed them to kind of land him. And they already kind of had an okay team. They got him and they became a good team. Then he was out for a season, which allowed them to be really bad out of nowhere and get Tim Duncan. And then he came back healthy and they were instantly really good, along with Sean Elliott, won a championship, and then continued to build from there, right? So neither of those guys necessarily came into a terrible situation like Wemby did. I'm not confident. I'm going to say it kindly. I'm not confident that the Spurs can actually build a contender around Wemby. And I'm also not confident that Pop is still the guy to do so. Mainly because I don't know if Pop is a rebuild kind of guy, to be perfectly honest with you.
We may not agree on a lot of things, Caleb, but I think we can agree the game has changed since the Spurs dynasty.
A lot.
And I don't know if he can, the way that he might build a team, the way they might try to play defense, those types of things. I don't know if that would work in where the game is at now.
Well, and I've always loved R.C. Buford. I think he's one of the best GMs in the game. But for whatever reason, he hasn't been able to hit on a draft pick again in a very long time. Wemby was a gift. You get the number 1 overall pick in the draft that he is in. Like, here's $10 million. Don't work anymore for the rest of your life, right? Like, that was a gift handed to them. They didn't have to do anything there. But Buford's made there's a reason Tony Parker and Ginobili and many other guys ended up on that teams through free agency, that he would move around, Boris Diaw and so on and so forth, that you'd be like, who cares about that guy? Well, the Spurs did, and he turned out to be a huge role player at one point or another for them because of what they knew they needed at the time.
And of course,
they're not finding that over the last
Robert's too young to know any of this.
6 to 7 years.
Yeah, it's all Greek to me. I'm watching the Nuggets game get started back here, so
6 to 7 years or so, they've failed in every draft pick. They haven't been able to build anybody. They're trading guys away that they drafted that are talented but head cases or just didn't perform and live up to expectations. So I wonder how long he stays in San Antonio specifically. Because if he ends his rookie deal and they're still not building anything around him, he knows Pop, Buford, those guys are going to be on their way out. They're not sticking around for his whole career. They're not going to be there forever. That voice is going to change. Who knows what that voice ends up being? Do you want to be in San Antonio for your whole life? Yeah, Texas is nice. You get some tax breaks, things of that nature, especially when you're international and you might have to pay double. But is that really how you want to proceed? So I don't know. There's a lot of things that I have to wonder and struggle with when it comes to what the Spurs and Wemby do long term together. So there's always that. There's always that with them.
Who's going to do it? Who's going to let him in? Who's going to let him in?
I mean, the man's wearing a Raptors jersey.
Booted immediately.
I'm guessing it's a Vince Carter. If I had to guess, he's probably rocking a VC. Yeah, there. I mean, you're not gonna find a bigger Vinsanity fan than me, most likely. So I can represent, or I can respect the rep. But he's not well liked in Toronto, unfortunately.
Yeah. How you guys doing?
Good, buddy. Good.
Good, man. Good,
We're
man.
just talking some Wemby, some Chet and Wemby.
Some Wimbledon? Oh, Wembanyama.
Yeah, Wembanyama.
Sure.
I don't think Wimbledon's coming up anytime soon, right?
I'm getting educated right now, Cam, so go get back to you.
We got a long time before Wimbledon, Pinky. Don't worry.
That was my last topic, and now it's Caleb's time to talk NBA. Anything he wants.
Anything? That's scary.
That's a broad.
Actually.
That's a lot of power for Caleb.
I am very interested. Now, we're still a long ways out. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we're still a little over a month away from the season ending. But we're starting to get a pretty good feel of where things are starting to fall and where they'll end up. And what I'm really interested to see right now is where those play-in games land. Because there are some teams down in those ranges that, depending on health or depending on chemistry for one given day, could be a little bit dangerous and make some runs on people. There's a reason the Lakers did it last year. So I kind of want to see how that starts unfolding here over the next month, how those 7, 8, 9, 10 seeds fall on each side of the bracket. right now,
I think the West is. I think you can confidently say that 7, 8, 9, 10 are those 4 teams. I don't know if it's going to change a lot.
well, I'll tell you why I'm not completely sold just yet. But I'll start with the East. When you look at Miami, Indy, Chicago, and Atlanta, Chicago is very interesting because they've been playing great basketball since Zach LaVine went down. Kobe White has finally kind of started producing at a guard level that they expected when they drafted him out of North Carolina. High pace, high efficiency kind of stuff. Playing really well with some of those other pieces. They have some talent. They do. Vucevic? Is it Vucevic, their center?
Sure.
Yeah.
Along with a couple other guys.
Robert.
Robertson over here, like, yeah, that guy. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they have some pieces where they could be dangerous. Indy, I mean, you look at Halliburton and what he's running with there with his other weapons. Could be scary. Miami's Miami.
What's crazy is they
comes back.
They haven't been as good since they traded for Siakam.
Siakam. But
Yeah,
yes,
whatever. Yeah.
they have not been. But it's still, things could finally start clicking. You know, second half of the season is they've only played together a little bit. They haven't had a lot of time yet. You don't get many practices during the season to really start working out game plans and rotations and things of that nature. So it is a big adjustment for a lot of guys. But that's a really good pick for them. So if it doesn't work out this year, don't fret. I think that still is a great fit for the other pieces they have. But you look at Halliburton with Siakam. You look at I'm drawing a blank on their center now. Oh, shoot.
On,
Turner,
Caleb, you're better
Miles
than that.
Turner. Miles Turner and some of the other pieces, like I said, they're dangerous. Miami's Miami. Jimmy Butler comes back healthy. Who knows what they do with Hero and the boys? Can they go on another run? Yep, they could. And then Atlanta, it's Trae Young. Ice Trae can go off for 50 plus at the Garden, you know, and end New York's hopes and dreams. Orange and blue skies, done. So there's some crazy things there that could be dangerous. Brooklyn, Toronto, those next couple steps down, if they went on some weird runs and found their ways in, I wouldn't be worried about them. But the 4 that are sitting there now, I can make an argument for first round wins, potentially, depending on who faces who. Now, if any of those teams face the Celtics outside of Miami, do I think they could win a 7-game series? No. Do I think Miami could, though, with a healthy playoff Jimmy? Yeah. Yeah, I do. Playoff Jimmy, Hero, and Adebayo, let's go. You know what I mean? So we'll see. Now, out west, you say they're set. I would agree with the caveat of health. Because you look at the Lakers and Golden State sitting there, those 2 teams could easily get real iffy with health and be done real quick. And then you're looking at a Utah, Houston possibly moving up in there somehow and being worthless. Now, Dallas and Sacramento, though, those 2 teams, I believe no matter what happens, as of right now, if it all finished this way, they'd have to play the playing games, but they would be the 7 and 8 seed ultimately. And that's dangerous teams in a 7-game series for the 1-2 seeds out west. Do I think the 1-2 seeds would still end up winning in a 7-game series? No. Unless it's the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets could be either one of those teams in 7 games and probably do it in 6 just because of their experience, their depth, and everything of the way they play. But you start looking at Minnesota, the Clippers, Oklahoma City having to play Sacramento, who went almost to the conference finals last year because they almost beat Golden State. And if they beat Golden State, I do believe they could have beat the Lakers. Like, I know it's almost, it's a big jump kind of thing, but I see that potential.
Hey, the Kings are 3-1 against the Nuggets this season.
Right? So that could be a bad matchup for the Nuggets as well. But and then Dallas has smoked teams. And then they played really bad at times. But you've seen what Luka can do in the playoffs. You see the way he can elevate his game when he wants.
The problem is he doesn't have that other guy that can be counted on consistently.
Now, if Kyrie's healthy, he does. Kyrie's been playing really good ball recently since he came back from injury. He's been playing. Look, you know me. I'm a guy who says he's a cancer to your team. I would not want him in my locker room. I don't think his play style fits with a lot of guys. It does fit with some guys, but not a lot of guys. But they found a chemistry that's working better than I thought it would here over the last month and a half or so. So it is something to keep an eye on, especially because Luka's just nasty. He's top 3 in the league right now. I don't know if anybody could argue with that. Pick your other 2 guys. One of them's going to be Jokic, so fill in the third, right? I think that's pretty much going to be for everybody.
Luka's got 35 and 7 tonight. That's pretty much normal. But when Kyrie's only putting up 15, they're down 20 points. So he just can't do it alone.
It's not necessarily what Kyrie's doing, Pinky, what you have to watch out for. It's if the bench is playing well. If it's those role players giving you 10 points.
But what they gave up for Kyrie, what they're expecting from Kyrie, if he's not putting up, it's just like last year for the Suns. Durant and Booker, when they both scored a lot of points, they did pretty well. If either one of them had an off night, they weren't winning.
But they still lost, even when both did well. And I said that. You can let them both go off. You stop the rotation. If you stop the rotation and only the stars go off, you're probably going to win the game. If you allow the rotation to also get hot, that's when things get dangerous. And that's why Dallas is so questionable on what they might be able to do, because their rotation is iffy as anything out there right now.
I have no faith that the Mavericks would win a first-round series.
Well, a lot of people said that a couple years ago when they played the Suns, and then Luka went nasty on D-Book and the boys, Chris Paul and everybody else, and sent them home. So let's not get ahead of ourselves on what a true superstar can actually do to your team when the lights matter, because that's what makes them a superstar, right? You can be really good all you want regular season, but if you can't show up when the lights are the brightest.
But they actually had a deeper team at that point because they hadn't traded it all away. And they still had Jalen Brunson too.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm not disagreeing with you. But he still elevated it to the point where they won, right?
Like, it's not like dominance.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
Robert, don't do it.
It definitely is.
I'm sorry. I had to poke the bear a little bit.
Don't you do it?
I got to.
When you can pull the iron out of the fire and brand somebody, yeah, that's dominance for sure. But that's what that'll be the last thing I discuss here with the basketball as we progress in the evening. But that I'm excited to see, because those matchups and what they could be, I could see some danger there for some of the top seeds depending on how they fall.
Well, hopefully the Nuggets still get the top seed, and it'll be A-OK.
Half game out right now.
Half game out. We need the Timberwolves to lose a couple here and there, but
I mean, we're not really worried about the Timberwolves come playoff time. Let's be honest about the situation, and I don't think anybody else is either.
I mean, maybe.
All right now.
All right. I guess we can mention Joker's close to running away with the MVP. It's not quite done yet, but it's getting there.
You're talking streaks. You're talking MVPs. You're just like, get it out.
I'm not worried about that, man. You know me.
He's playing well. He's having, an insanely good season again. And what's crazy is you talk about elevating your game year in and year out and adding something new to it or improving on something, and he continues to find ways to do that somehow that continue to blow my mind at the efficiency at which he plays at. And let's take it a step further. And I'll end with this. When you talk about guys and raising the level of their teammates' games and that elevation that they bring to everyone, a high tide raises all boats, right? That old saying. Did anybody see what MPJ did the other night?
Yeah, buddy.
That man was 10 for 10 with more than 5 3-pointers shot from the field for the game. First player in NBA history to do so. Yes, there's a lot of talent there. Yes, you can say he got hot and had a lucky night, so on and so forth. But there is a level of efficiency at which Jokic plays with day in and day out that rubs off on teammates to the points where if you look at MPJ's shot selection from his rookie year to now and the mindset in which he creates space to have those opportunities, There's a reason he's doing that. And yes, it's an evolution of his own game. And watching Steph and those guys he's always talked about emulating and the way they space the court. But it's also when you play with somebody great like that, who you know is worried about making you better more than what his stat line looks like, you're going to start watching what he does and emulating some of that. And it's rubbing off on guys. And that's why I've said that I do believe the Nuggets are still the clear-cut favorite for the NBA championship, regardless of what the Celtics are doing out east and some of the other teams are doing out west, because of this team chemistry that they have that I just don't quite see with anybody else. And it's insane to watch. And I'm lucky enough. And to me, it's one of the great kind of things that you saw with the Bulls, you saw with the Lakers early on, you saw with the Spurs, obviously, Golden State, and now you're seeing it with the Nuggets. Those truly great teams that make really great runs have this love of playing the game with each other that you don't usually see anywhere else on the court, regardless of what you hear off the court. On the court, they show what appears to be a love of playing with each other and their styles of play that you can't match. And that's huge when you're trying to make these big runs and win multiple championships.
You know, I think that the San Antonio Spurs example is the best example. I feel like if you're going to like compare teams, just because of like how unselfish the Nuggets are and how unselfish, you know, the San Antonio Spurs are. But, you know, I'm happy that, you know, Michael Porter Jr. was able to put a Cameron Parker 2K stat line together, you know, for a night. But you're spot on. And I feel like, you know, there's a reason why, like, I'm not comparing. When I make this comparison, I'm not saying that Nikola Jokic is going to end up being the greatest player in NBA history, right? But when I make this comparison, I'm making the comparison in the sense of like he does things in a way that it blows your mind. How a guy like this can be like look unathletically gifted, but he's an athletic freak.
He's a goofy dude.
And the comparison I made a few times is that, you know, it's like Tom Brady. Like when Tom Brady came into the NFL, first onto the combine, like he was goofy looking. Like he was goofy looking, and like he was doing things unorthodox that not many people were seeing. But then once he got into the league, he was able to do what he needed to on a it's gotten to the point where you have to appreciate what you're watching, right? Like you're talking about like an elite, like YMCA level player that is lifting everybody around him. Like it's just like it's truly beautiful to watch.
Appreciate the greatness while it's around. And kids, if you're watching, or parents with children, if you're watching, your kids better be playing soccer until they're at least in high school. I'm telling you right now, the level of footwork that creates, you hear it so often coming from international players, especially, and you're like, footwork's really good. I played soccer till I was 14, 15, 16. Joel Embiid, that's what he did until he was like 16 and got invited to some NBA camp, right? Like Hakeem Olajuwon, all these dudes, Luka, Jokic. I can go on and on. The list is really long. It's an international game everywhere else but America, right? Everybody cares about it more than their other sports, so they all grow up playing it, and it creates this level of footwork that's absurd. So Americans, continue to let your kids play soccer because it's going to help them in all their sports, not just basketball. Soccer helps footwork for everything.
Is that the StreamYard cue? The 2 thumbs up gives you the fireworks? Is that how that works?
We're breaking the fireworks
I love
tonight,
it,
man.
So as I'm talking everything in footwork,
I didn't get them. What's going on
into
here?
that NFL situation, guys that have amazing footwork are going to do better with certain things. And we have some things we want to talk about with guys who are really good and probably have great footwork. Pinky, what do you have for us today, sir?
Damn, just like that. Huh?
Just sliding it in. All right, buddy.
Damn.
All right.
Slide in those DMs, boy.
We got to talk a little bit about your favorite part of the NFL offseason.
The Underwear Bowl?
I know you love it every time. The Underwear Olympics. There was quite a few things that come up. Again, the NFL has created it as a separate event. You can go to the combine. It's free. Fans can go.
Only if you live in Indianapolis, apparently.
No, I know some people that got out there.
I wasn't one of them.
Broncos super fan
Albert
from a
was
couple
one of
years
them.
ago got out there.
I would have gone.
I might go sometime. I might mess with it. They are debating moving it around.
No.
I don't think they should, but they are thinking about taking it on tour like they are the NFL draft. So we'll see what they do with that.
I guess.
I don't like the idea either. I like leaving it in Indy and just being there always, personally.
So I think, Caleb, if I'm correct, you are at the point now where you don't believe we need the combine. Is that correct?
I've been at that point in time for a very long time, Pinky. Years, decade plus, easy. I think the combine is worthless, personally. I think some guys go in there too nervous and it hurts their stock, and I think other guys go in there and look great without pads on and in a what I truly believe, honestly, I know other people argue this, but what I truly believe is a very low pressure environment. Given the drills you're running, to me those are cake. That should be easy work for all these guys, given the situations that they've done for their entire career. So yeah, I think it's completely worthless situation. I do believe it's a good thing for everybody that is in a front office of a team, because they can all get together and talk behind closed doors and not have collusion thrown around and breaking rules and things of that nature, and being able to put deals in place before time allows it to be. So I think in that regard, it's great. I think it's great you can get a lot of guys together in one place, a lot of different position groups, and have them all there together. So what I would prefer to see the NFL doing with those is setting those guys up for success and using those opportunities for, okay, you want to do some interviews with teams and talk to them? Cool. And then let's do some seminars, some symposiums, some things that are going to help you within your NFL career develop and grow as human beings once your NFL career is over. Because plain and simple to me, if you're an NFL team and you need the combine to go out and finally make a decision on who you're going to draft, you already failed. There's enough tape on these guys from actual gameplay. And then if you really need them to do some underwear Olympics, go to their pro day and you'll be just fine. Beyond that, going to the combine, I don't see as a benefit to any single player whatsoever. So I'm actually amazed at the number of participants that we still see year in and year out at this event.
So I'm going to agree. I disagree, but I agree with the point. I think they need to change it up. I don't think I need offensive linemen and defensive linemen to run a 40. I don't care how fast they are for 40 yards. I care how fast they are for like 10 yards.
Well, it depends on the defensive lineman, though, because like the defensive lineman for the combine group, it ranges between like a defensive end to a nose tackle. So it's like
I'm going to stop both of you right there. You know what I don't give a shit about? Some dude running really fast without any of his fucking equipment on.
Which is
so
something
again,
else.
if you watch the game tape, the game tape and everybody's running away from the guy, and then he goes out, yeah.
Is that soccer? At this point, I mean,
like, come on, like, let's not do this. Let's not. What's the point?
Well, so
the bench press doesn't make a lot of sense in most cases.
I disagree with that one. I disagree with that one. There is a level of strength that can be shown that now. It's just like the 40 though. Speed is dangerous, but if you don't know how to run a route, it's probably not that dangerous at all. Strength is dangerous, but if you don't have any technique, it's probably not that dangerous at all. So again, you're talking about these things that don't matter. That matter. You're talking about these things that matter, but you're talking about them completely out of context of the game.
So
See,
you know what's funny, Caleb, is when you talk about this, I start thinking about the scene from Baywatch with The Rock, and they start doing all these like insane like workout stuff, and everyone's like, "So what does this have to do with saving people in the water?" And I'm like, that's a very good point. Why are we doing this right now? Like, what is
That's
the
what it
point
is.
here?
That's
Well,
what it is.
so, but the thing that I will push back on, and why the combine doesn't matter, say that to a small school guy. Like we talked about it. We talked about it today. Don't care, Caleb. I mean, I actually mean this. Like, I seriously don't care. Like, truly, like if you're talking about an underdog story, like Dylan Laube from New Hampshire, like, that is like their biggest ticket to possibly get it into the NFL. And so, like, obviously they'll have their pro day, but there's no guarantee that because he went to New Hampshire or he went to some other school that he's going to have that kind of attention.
How many scouts or NFL guys are going to the New Hampshire Pro Day, right?
You don't need to go.
Well, I mean,
dude, that's the whole point, though. You don't need to go to the pro day or the combine to have these numbers. You don't have to. You can get them without even watching this. So if
But how are you
just based off of some 4.32 that some dude ran,
but then what about Jason
a
Kelsey?
3-cone drill at 11-1 or whatever it may be, you're failed already. That's my point. Like,
but the thing is, like, that's such
a of what the dude did on the field.
But again, that's an indictment on those small schools like that, because, like, I mean, for the bigger schools, that are like Power 5 and everything like that, they can probably access that no problem. But it's just like it's the smaller schools, like the Fordhams, like the
but if you're that talented, Cam, you're already going to be on guys' radar. You're not just going to show up and come out of nowhere just because the combine happened.
Not necessarily.
Not
necessarily, because, like, there's guys even on Division 2, like Division 3. I mean, there are. I mean, I don't necessarily know many names, but I mean. But there's guys probably on Colorado School of Mines that are great football players that are at least deserving to have a NFL scout or an NFL person be in attendance for someone that is, like.
But
so
Cam,
like
Cam, that's what that whole undrafted rookie free agent process is for, because of the NFL not being able to trust their own eyes. So they go, well, he played Division 2. It wasn't tough competition. We're just going to bring him in for camp and not use a draft pick on him. The NFL has workarounds for all of this, my guy. That's why they put all these things in place.
I agree to a certain extent, but personally, that's an indictment on their scouting department, not doing a deep enough dive to actually, travel and actually do enough homework on these guys.
85% of people in personnel decisions within the NFL are trash. And I've been saying that for years, too.
I agree with Cam that, again, the exposure that a lot of guys get from the draft, the combine, as well as the Senior Bowl and the East-West Shrine game, and that helps build that story to, and again, it's an indictment on the scouting community of forcing them to go back and look at the tape. Like,
and I've said, still let you have that exposure, right? Still come and do some interviews and things where you're around the teams and you're being introduced, you're learning things about the league and so on and so forth. I'm just saying the drills at this point are completely worthless. But there's no reason for them.
They're going to have the combine forever since it's an event.
Oh yeah, it's not going anywhere. I understand that. I understand that. And I like talking about it just as much as the other guy. When Xavier Worthy went out and ran 4.21, and I've got Patrick Mahomes going, 4.2, whatever he said, 3, and then he had to correct his own tweet, and then I'm waiting for a correction of the correction because he originally said 4.22. And then it came out like I'm. Don't get me wrong. I'm still watching this stuff. I'm watching Romeo Odunze out there running the 3-cone drill and mad because he's not getting the time beat that he wanted to get beat. I love seeing that. I love seeing the competition between McCarthy and Penix and all the other boys that went out there and said Milton and the guys that said, I'm going to throw. Let's have a competition. I like seeing that atmosphere. I like seeing guys compete. That doesn't change my mind on what I think is required and not required.
Let's talk about that for a moment, because I think a lot of folks it comes up every year, but at this point, there's guys that decide not to work out.
Hey, we talked about
who decide not to throw, and at this point, it's kind of like not playing your bowl game. Like if you've
No.
got to a point,
Whoa.
hold on. There's risk in going out in the combine and possibly not putting up a great performance.
Okay,
You
if that's
could-
the angle you're going with, I'll give you
Right.
that one. I'll give you. I'll
That's-
cheers
the
to
bowl
you.
game's
That's
more
the
about-
angle
Everyone's
I'm
holding
rolling
their
with.
breath
Cheers.
there for a second.
The
Cheers.
bowl
Like,
game's
we had
more
an
about
atomic.
injury, but the
You're right
combine,
though, because if
protect
I was
yourself.
a QB, I sure as shit ain't throwing at the combine. Because the timing and precision you have with your wide receivers, whether it's at college or at the next level that you'll get through the offseason and training camp and everything else, you're not going to get with the combine. Or you're throwing to a bunch of random dudes who are trying to make a name for themselves too, who you probably never heard of. So you could throw some balls that are really great, but because they ran the incorrect route or their timing was off or they
Or
don't
they're
have
not
good
as
hands
fast
when they
as your
drop
guys.
them, whatever it may be, they could drop a couple balls and people could look at that and go, well, maybe you don't throw a soft touch ball. Maybe you don't throw a catchable ball. You know, all these bullshit terms that
Right.
people come up with to describe QBs to make them
Mhm.
knock down a notch, right? So especially if I was a QB, I
top
wouldn't
three
be throwing
guys-
at the combine.
Top 3 guys did not throw.
Which is
Yeah,
fine.
but let's be honest, that's not uncommon. And whether they threw or not, it's not changing their draft stock, right? So there's a reason for these things.
And that's the point. And I think that's the point we made on 5280.
But another reason why the combine's worthless, if guys cannot participate and their draft stock is not changed in any situation, that might say something as well.
Well,
Some
but
guys
I mean,
need it, some guys don't.
I think that some guys, there's some guys that do need it, some guys that don't. I will say, from a, and I think Pinky, you probably were listening at this point, but it was just like, obviously for guys like a Caleb Williams, a Drake May, Jaden Daniels, the top 3 there, they probably were tipped off that they are going within the top, 6 or 7 picks. So there's really no need, depending on the amount of analysis that you were given, there's really no need for you to throw at the combine, obviously. But I will say, like, for a guy like a Michael Penix Jr., regardless if the format of what it is that they were able to do, throwing the football and everything catered a little bit more to him than maybe any of the quarterbacks that it's in the class, I still think it mattered in the sense of, like, here's a guy who his medicals, despite having clear medicals for 2 years, he went out there, he was able to compete in basically almost every single other drill, if you will, maybe not named the other stuff, right? But he was able to throw and do what he needed to do, but also get the clear of the medical and everything like that. So it's beneficial to him. The one that I feel like we didn't get a chance to talk about this much on 5280 is and maybe why he maybe needed to not do it is because, but I feel like it just depends on, like, once you make your decision to throw, you're locked in and you have to throw at the combine and everything. But the reason why I say that is because a guy like a JJ McCarthy, before coming into the combine, like, 3 weeks ago or so, he was, he was like 10 to 20, right? Like, he was 10 to 20 range. But then, like, within the last week,
He's top 10 now.
well, before the combine, he was starting to get into, like, the top 10 conversation. And so my push a little bit there as well, if you're JJ McCarthy and you're having these conversations, so if you're starting to see all these new reports come in, and this is where, you're starting to maybe contemplate, is throwing at the combine worth it? Like, is it truly worth it? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing maybe some of these drills and everything? Like, should I be doing that? Like, I think at that point, that's when maybe you should be having a conversation. But again, like, if you're locked in, like, there's a certain deadline where you can't change it. You can't do anything about it. Like, you're locked in, and you're in what it is that you need to do. Like, it kind of is what it is at that point. But I feel like you would at least be given some grace in the sense of, like, well, if you see some of these results come through, maybe you should give some consideration in the fact of, like, maybe I shouldn't be throwing the way I'm hearing some of this other stuff, like, so, but I get the side of it. Like, even back to, like, the entertainment side of things, like, really the whole reason why the entertainment is driven from the combine is strictly because of the 40-yard dash, like that.
Absolutely.
And the reason why is because
I don't get, because I don't like that. I like seeing the guys throw the ball. I like seeing the defensive linemen run through the bags, and I like seeing running backs do their like agility drills and stuff. I like that. I don't like the 40.
That was talked about on a regular. Now it's not mentioned nearly as much.
Like
Cam, I'll go back to the quarterbacks you were talking about. Look, I've been a big fan of Penix from the beginning of the college season. These
Indiana,
guys
maybe.
can attest to that. Like
Maybe
a
even
smooth
Indiana.
lefty, strong arm, precision, especially downfield. I love Penix, and I said he was a first round, regardless of what anybody else was saying. They're crazy. I also said, and Pinky, you and I have talked about this before and kind of gone back and forth, and I feel like while I haven't changed your mind, I've gotten you to think about it a little bit more than maybe you would have before, where you talk about a guy being injury prone.
Yeah,
And
I
injury
think I was there. I
history,
think I was there for that.
or having injuries within his history. When you look at Penix, his injuries were, to me, they were injuries that happened within his history. He is not injury prone. They were just unfortunate, really bad injuries that happened. Those usually are just bad luck kind of stuff, torn ACLs and broken bones, those kinds of things. When you have a guy that's injury prone, injury history, it's more of a guy that is always nicked up, continuously missing games for things
Dude's hamstrings always hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
Jake Butt.
Nick's never really had those, and now he's got 2 healthy years under his belt at Washington. Cam, if you want to use the combine and do the medicals, and you want to use it for the interviews and stuff, like I said, I love all that still.
Yeah.
But if you needed the combine to go, oh, wow, Michael Penix's arm jumps off the page.
Yeah.
You are worthless at your job. You didn't need that to know that. This is what I'm trying to get at. So Penix had already been talked about like that. If you wanted to look at medicals and see what his injury history was and what it is now and how he's been healthy and compare the two and so on and so forth, fine. You want to talk about J.J. McCarthy? I told these guys a couple weeks back, maybe 3 weeks or so. I said, I think I got to start reevaluating McCarthy. I think I'm about to do a 180 on him. I think I've been wrong. I think this dude might be a top 3 pick. Is basically what I told these guys. And I got to start reevaluating and looking at it because I have this feeling that I didn't look at the things I truly needed to during the course of his last season. Well, guess what? There's tape for me to go do that with. Not watch him throw at the combine and do a couple really beautiful bombs downfield.
Although his story is a little bit different because he doesn't have as much tape of him just throwing the ball 30, 40 times. So
but that's not the point. You can still watch the tape and go, oh, there is tape of him doing this. And actually, there's tape of him doing it really well. He just didn't do it a lot because their game plan did not require or call for such things to happen.
All I know is the guy could run. He could move in the pocket. He throw accurate balls on third down, and the dude won.
Did you guys see I'm
going to keep saying it. If you needed the combine. Now, you want to talk about the little guys and coming out and giving themselves a platform to do something. I'm not going to completely be against that. I don't think it's necessary. I still think it's guys not doing their job, and I still think it's that undrafted free agent avenue that happens for most of them anyways. But I won't hate on that avenue.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do that, then let's not invite the big names. Let's invite the guys that are on the fringe. Let's invite the guys that may not know if they're draftable or not, and let them be the ones that come to the combine and prove it, and let the big names do their pro days.
So then how would you set those parameters then,
actually valuable for somebody rather than nobody.
Right. I like that, Robert. Say that again.
But how do you set those parameters then for that type of an event?
If you have a draft grade, you're not invited. It's real simple. Or if you have a draft grade that's not in the top 4 rounds, you're not invited. You can set a parameter, you can set limits, and there's enough of people out there doing these draft grades. And there's a reason guys decide to declare because they're driven a draft grade, usually by an agent or somebody within the NFL that says you are going to be drafted. This is your draft grade for the rounds we're projecting you in. These are things that exist. You can use them and then use that as a cutoff line, which is what they already do. They only invite, 100 and I think it's like 120 or something like that?
Like 200 and something. 244 or something?
It was actually 3. No. It was 300. It was over 300 this year. Because the one thing The
so
one
they
thing I was
continue to increase it, but still, you could cut out the first 100 of that easily and bring in another 100 that, like you said, Cam, could use the platform to prove that they do have some of these skills required and let them shine for a little bit, rather than guys are definitely getting drafted already.
But and I think one of the reasons why it's expanding, and again, you would probably have to put some parameters on it to what Robert was asking, but I think one of the reasons why we may see it a little bit more, where maybe you do see a little bit more parameters to what Caleb was saying, is, if I'm not mistaken, starting this year. Well, I mean, yeah, it's starting this year. Underclassmen were finally invited to the NFL Combine, which is
no, the Senior Bowl.
Senior Bowl. Yeah, Senior Bowl.
Which
but
makes no sense because it's called the freaking Senior Bowls. Leave some stuff alone.
I think it just depends on for the Senior Bowl's case, like, because it's an all-star game. Like, if you're going to be bringing some people in, you might as well be bringing in truly like the best talents, the best players, to there that are, obviously above that. I just think that, like, it's just an interesting one because the combine, I mean, I enjoy watching it, and I do certainly, enjoy watching specific drills, but like, that's the thing, is like, if you're really into the NFL Combine, you find yourself being more in tuned on those drills. So I definitely understand Caleb's side of it, in the sense of why possibly like the combine is meaningless in that. But like, for like even like the JJ McCarthy like stuff real quick, like, he actually did the 3-cone drill, and I don't know if you guys had the chance to like get a chance to see what he did in the 3-cone drill, but like, he well, it wasn't just him either, but like, you had Ricky Pearsall, Luke McCaffrey, and JJ McCarthy all in like the top 5 of like overall 3-cone drill, which is like, and even for like JJ McCarthy's standpoint, like, that's impressive. Like, that is like super impressive. But I like how Caleb even brought into this a little bit about the Symposium. And one thing I was going to add real quick on that before we possibly even move into like our next topic was, I do know when rookies are drafted, they go through and they do a rookie symposium once they're drafted. Mm-hmm. So I do know they do that once you're drafted. I will say I really do like that side of it, where if you're going to add some different wrinkles, like, think of it this way: like, when you guys were in high school, whether you did or you didn't, how many of you guys feel like you wish you had a senior seminar class before you graduated high school, knowing kind of like what it is that you were going into, in essence, into college? Like, it would be so beneficial. Oh, yeah. Like, it'd be so beneficial, knowing, what to kind of expect going into college, and what to expect, like resumes and, everything like that, even once you're leaving high school. And obviously some high schools did do that. So why can't the NFL do that with like the combine, in essence, and do, and do almost, in essence, the same thing, right? Like, and maybe they do, and maybe that's just something like we don't know about, but I feel like that would truly be ideal, right? Like, cause like, and obviously the interviews is maybe one key, like, maybe a driving force, maybe why they don't, and, so on and so forth. But, yeah, I feel like just doing almost like a high school senior seminar, if you will, or something like that, would be really beneficial for those prospects as they go into the NFL.
Which is why I love how the soccer academies around the world are established, because they build that farm with that Symposium kind of going into it, that this is what you're going to be doing. This is what you're going to expect. And that's what you live, breathe, and do for the rest of your life until that, your retirement comes. And I think if you can find a way to maybe mesh those two things together to where you can use that kind of same mentality from like a soccer academy on the international spectrum, but condense it to where it's just like an NFL camp, whatever, like it's just a 6-week thing or whatever, and it really develops these guys and it makes it worth something, then that might be something worth looking into, instead of it just being, hey, here's a the underwear Olympics for the 3 days and actually make it something that is worth it, not just for the player but also the viewer.
And again, it's meaningless. If they already have this, then kudos to them for having it. Because I mean, we're kind of just simply speculating at that point. But I feel like, and this is maybe a wrong way necessarily to look at it, because you obviously can do your homework of like looking and calling colleges and understanding, like, not to quote draft day, but did they attend did they attend your quarterback's birthday party? Like, but like, I mean, but those things are beneficial and everything. But like, I think that it still would be beneficial, because in those symposiums, you're learning about situations not to be in, like, never to leave, your dorm room or your where you're at the combine, like beyond midnight or something, right? Like, or knowing the fact of like these, not necessarily a curfew, but knowing the fact of like once you because you can't really parent them too much, but like knowing the boundaries of like once you get into the NFL, these are the types of things to expect. And so not necessarily, and it's a bad way necessarily to be labeling this, but it's almost like the background check before the background check, if that makes any sense.
We still talking the combine? Is that did I not?
No.
Walking off camera and doing this to the combine, was that not?
You must have been off camera, bro. You jumped out to the window.
I mean, we saw your ass on the mirror, so
Yeah, there's a reason for that. I was still visible. It's not like I walked out the door on purpose. I just thought maybe that was a clear decision of the combine had been spoken about enough. It's the combine, guys. It's not. No, we're not NFL Network. We don't have to create content for something that doesn't need content created for.
We're speculating on a lot of different things, and so.
No, you missed it, Caleb. I don't know what happened to you.
No, we were actually.
We missed it.
I heard all of it.
But to be fair, though, we were backing off of like what you brought up, which was like the symposium. If you,
I know, I'm giving you guys a hard time, but it's the combine. It's the combine.
You're a Huskers fan. Everything cancels out at this point. So,
well, Huskers fans don't care about the combine either, because the Huskers don't go to the combine.
I will when Dylan Raiola becomes a number 1 overall pick.
Well, he won't be at the combine then, Cam.
He's going to show up, answer some questions, and be out.
Goodness. I do think it needs a drastic overhaul. Like in all honesty, in all seriousness, I think it needs a drastic overhaul at this point.
So what's the you talk about?
Well, I think I got to talk about my man Jason Kelce retiring.
Yes.
Did anybody watch his press conference? I did. I'm a big fan of his.
I got about 10 minutes into it. I still need to finish it, but that was, bro. Everybody's crying.
He had me shedding a tear, man.
I was like, man, I can't do this right now.
You kind of knew it was coming. Like,
oh yeah, no,
I thought he was gonna do one more.
It's a great watch on Prime. On Prime, they've got Kelce documentary that goes through his the Super Bowl season, and he talked about being done, at the end of that season. And then he made the decision, as close as they came. He made the decision to come back because, again, he wanted to win a Super Bowl, another one. So,
incredible career, incredible career. He was, if we're going to compare offensive linemen to a certain extent, he was the Joe Thomas of the center position. In terms of if you were to compare current players, and the reason why I say it is because Joe Thomas was an Iron Man. Jason Kelce was an Iron Man. The moment he stepped foot in the NFL was the moment he became an NFL starter. I mean, it was.
Damn, it's solid comparison.
I mean,
I like that.
I promise, Caleb, every once in a while, every 5th or 6th topic I talk about, I have a brain. I promise.
Which, do you know what number draft pick he was?
He was a 6th rounder, if I remember right.
24.
191.
Oh, close.
Wasn't that
2011?
Well, somebody else was in 191 too, if I remember right.
But yeah, it's impressive. I want to say it's something along the lines of 158 career starts. Even dating back to like when he was there in 2011. It's just an absurd number. He never He never was inactive. He never he was a full bill of health, and for the center position, it's taxing. And for him to last as long as he has, it's incredible.
What do you think the last 2 years have done to his body with the tush push?
It's destroyed it.
I don't think it's as bad as you think it is.
He talks about it. He talks about it. You were literally at the bottom of a pile with 300-pound dudes jumping on top of you. He's like, every time it was not fun, but he got the job done. And one of the few guys that can do it.
The one thing I will say is, man, that was such that was one of the best retirement pressers that I can recall. I mean, as far as and even taking the bias side of things of Peyton Manning, I don't know if I've ever been that emotional, even since a Peyton Manning press conference, because that was obviously we were immersed into the Peyton Manning stuff because you knew that the time was up.
Did we even get a Tom Brady one?
If Tom Brady had one, I thought it was on a video on social media or something where he announced his retirement and everything. But as far as a press conference, I don't know if we ever had a press conference, for something like that. Which, at that moment, when you retire, what you do with it is what you do with it. And so if Tom felt it necessary to not do a press conference, then that's Tom Brady. But it was just so emotional, to hear everything that he was going down. I mean, Travis was in the building. Obviously, his family was in the building. Oh, no Taylor Swift sighting for any Swifties that are in the chat. No Swiftie sighting with Travis in the building.
This is only close family. Only close family.
At least right now, between Travis Kelce and Jason, only close family members. But it was great. I mean, the emotion he was riding with was just incredible. And I mean, I even still think about NFL Network was actually playing it. I totally forgot about it when they won the Super Bowl, and he just went crazy, into that Super Bowl, party speech, when he's
his Super Bowl parade speech will go down as the greatest player parade speech in NFL history. Period. No questions asked.
And actually, maybe even any sport aside from Jokic, in the sense of I'm biased here, but aside from Jokic going and basically saying I know I said I don't do parade, but I love parade. So almost to
the Muma outfit though was on a whole different level.
Yeah,
or Mumba, or I don't know. I'm not from Philly, but that costume, he put that on. And man, I mean, he's beloved in Philly. I actually, I know a Philly fan. He's part of the family, and I texted him. I was like, "Hey, man, sorry about Jason Kelce. We loved him. He was good." He was like, "Man, that dude is number one on Philly sports Mount Rushmore." And I was like, "Wait, number one?" I was like, "What about Dr. J? What about Mike Schmidt?"
Yeah.
He was like, "No, number one." I was like, "Okay." I had to think about that. I don't know about that, but he's up there.
I will say he's also a guy with how cerebral he is, and he understands the game. He's a guy that I could see that this is if he's completely done with football, but I could see him being one of those guys that's an offensive line coach, down the line, but he's just that knowledgeable.
I could see. You are absolutely correct, Cam, from knowledge, and I'm sure being a guy who's done it, I'm sure he could absolutely teach it. But
the question is if you want to.
But he's about to get $100 million to do a podcast, so
watching that dude over the last couple of years outside of football, supporting his brother the way he has, there's no way he's staying inside of football. That dude has too many other interests in life.
Mm-hmm.
That there is no way he's going to be in football after he's done.
And I just think because it takes a certain other person, right? Because I mean, I'm not going to say he's associated, being a coach or whatever, but it's almost like the Peyton Manning thing, right?
But they could do it if they wanted to.
They could do it if they wanted to, and so for Peyton Manning, he's not a quarterback coach. He's not a general manager, which is obviously something that Bronco fans, NFL fans have been speculating for Peyton for quite some time. It's like, oh, maybe he'll be a general manager someday, or maybe he'll be a QB coach or something like. No, but what does he do? He and Eli formed the Omaha Productions, kind of to a certain extent, almost like New Heights, even though New Heights is owned by a pretty massive company, but like it's still almost the same deal. It's like, when you're immersing yourself into something where you can still breathe knowledge, and not play football, that's even as beneficial as it is not playing.
Because they're still making money like hand over fist.
Well,
so
I mean, even another Philly example is I think Chris Long and the other guy, his brother, Kyle Long, they do a podcast together. And I forget what that's called, but that's another really good podcast too.
Chris's podcast does pretty well.
Yeah, so I mean, there's ways to certainly be successful, obviously, when you're not playing football. And I do agree. I mean, I don't foresee him being a coach, but he's one of those cases, like if you were to look at him, I could see him being one.
It's funny because in the Prime show, they show Jason Kelce, and he's talking about that of like, what do I do after football? He's actually been buying real estate and doing like fix and flips. He's got I can't remember what type of farm it is. I wanted to say it's a mushroom farm, but it's not. They show him out there actually, working on the dirt and the soil. And then he's got some other things. And then they had just introduced the podcast and brought that up. He's going to make tons of money off of that. He's not going to really have to do anything that he doesn't want to do.
Well, here's the last thing I'll say about this.
Caleb's like ready to move on.
I love Jason Kelce, but talking about one dude's retirement this long gets a little cray-cray.
Dude, his retirement speech was 40 minutes.
Well, that's on him. It doesn't mean we have to, unless we're going to talk about the man's actual career and start breaking down stats and talking about his all-time status. Like, we don't need to, you guys would sit here breaking down frame by frame his retirement speech. Like, easy, fellas.
We're the NFL Network, man.
Yeah,
I think if we're talking about Mount Rushmore all-time top of in Philly sports, there's one name that is always mentioned, and the dude didn't even win a championship, and it's AI. And that might be the only guy within a championship culture city sports town that didn't win a championship that could be at the top of a Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
That'd be a question.
Jason Kelce above AI in Philly is crazy.
That actually
the other names Pinky mentioned.
I will say that I was going to say
this to Pinky, and we kind of went back and forth about it a little bit. But I do believe now, because of their bond and how much they love being in the league together and what Jason means to Travis, especially if the Chiefs three-peat this year, I could see Travis also retiring, going out on top, and being out of the league as well. And I think this has bigger implications for how his career is going to end than maybe people want to believe or realize.
It's a really good point. And I did have
that completely.
Yeah, I actually did have that thought just as the press conference was going forward, because especially when you even – here we go. We're going an hour now talking about Jason Kelce. But no, I just think that when you think about how Jason was the one who really advocated for him, even going back to college, and how much of a brother he is to him, and how much they love each other and everything. And so I actually can absolutely see it. Frankly, even if he confirmed, that he's going to be playing in 2024, I could see him being so emotional with that press conference that he's just like, you know what? It's kind of like where I'm at too. It's like, him even retiring, even with 2024. So it's just like, that's the bond that they had, though.
Word, yo.
All right. We're gonna move on, Caleb, just for you, buddy.
Going right on.
Bad, guys. You started dissecting his retirement press conference, and I think we were getting a little.
What's so bad about that?
Just a little deep. That's all.
We have 33 live views.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Hey, appreciate everybody that enjoyed it. Sorry if I ruined your groove.
Nuggets are getting killed right now.
Get at me, throw you out a window.
Nuggets are getting crushed right now. It's crazy.
We're talking about underwear Olympics, and we're talking about Jason Kelly's frame-by-frame retirement speech. Like, thought there were other things that might have been slightly more interesting, but that's just me. My bad. Maybe I should just shut my mouth. I
Well,
apologize.
here we go, buddy. It's
Yeah,
your time.
Your
Your
now.
time to
We moved
shine.
on just for you. You asked for this, so we're giving it to you. So there's no going back now.
So does
Yeah,
that mean
you got to take this and roll.
We closed this book and moved on.
What is this? What is this weekend, Caleb?
NFL free agency, Pinky.
Yeah. Where hope springs eternal for all teams.
Oh, it could. It
legal
could.
tampering?
It could. It could.
Yeah,
It
I don't even consider it tampering. Free agency starts this
Bring it
weekend.
fireworks, baby.
I still love the meme that I sent y'all that Russell Wilson in free agency as a broken record player does not work, but could be fun to fix. Like, I thought that was fun.
I saw that
I
one
guess it
earlier.
depends on what part of the record player is broken, though. You know what I mean? Like,
Is it a vinyl?
It was, yeah, it's bad.
It was at one point.
So,
It
Caleb,
was worth something.
where
Not
do you want to
anymore.
start?
well, we talked quarterbacks last week, I think, in depth enough that we don't need to discuss that market per se at this point in time, other than to say that Justin Fields bears F around and find out thing. Pinky, are you feeling any different this week about that situation, or do you still feel confident that it'll get done?
Nah, they're gonna get that trade done, man.
I don't know.
I don't know how you're so confident, but
So
cheers,
again,
my man, good for you.
again, it comes back to they're gonna have to realize he's not as valuable to everybody else as he is to them.
You realize that's an indictment on, if they feel that way, Pinky. You realize that's an indictment on possibly Fields and what they think of him as an option, and that they don't want to trade him. If they
What hurts his value quite a bit right now? Because there's two things that I see that hurts his value.
I mean, what do they not view him as an NFL starter?
Well, one, you've got 6 guys that possibly could go in the first round of the NFL draft.
Yep, that's a big problem.
So if I can go ahead and just draft one of those guys, and I don't have to spend money or I don't have to send other draft capital to the Bears, I'll just do that, right?
Exactly.
And then I'm just restarting, got somebody young.
Okay.
And again, they may not – I know some of these guys are actually maybe older than Fields, so, the age thing may not be the biggest
Part of
thing,
the reason
but-
the Bears want to draft a new QB, by all accounts, is because they want to reset that market of their room, right?
Right.
So why would any other situation want to be any different with any other team?
And then there's at least not – I think there's at least one really good option. I think we could agree Kirk Cousins is a good option to bring in if you're needing a quarterback. And then there's the guys that you're just like, they could win us some football games if we've got other things around them, like a Baker, like a Jameis Winston, I'll even go with Sam Darnold. Could probably win you some games if you've got, good O-line, good scheme.
Or you have teams that are in the Broncos situation where you don't really have anything to give up in a trade for Justin Fields.
Right. So
Even though you may want him, you can't afford to do anything about it.
In another year, if the draft was a draft where you had Kenny Pickett as the number 1 quarterback getting drafted, could you get a pretty good amount for Fields? I think you could. But we're not in that time.
But who's going to take him? Who's going to take him, Pinky? And what are they going to be willing to give up for him at this point in time? When, like you said, there's some real other options now that may be better for you as an organization.
I think the Bears, if they need to settle for like a 2nd and a 5th, and get it done, because I think we're at
the point we're at a 3rd, Pinky. I think that's where the market has now dropped to.
Yeah.
And I think that the Bears would be lucky at that point to get a 3rd for Fields based on the way they've handled the situation.
I tell you, this is a case where I was far more confident. We talked about it pre-podcast and actually post-podcast with 5280 even tonight, but it was like I was confident in this idea that Justin Fields was going to end up, being traded. Now, within the last 24 hours, given some of the rumors that have been percolating, I'm not so confident right now. Because, and the reason why I say that is it feels like the Kirk Cousins to Atlanta thing, if it happens, will have large effects, in my opinion, on the whole Justin Fields thing, just in general, because then his options will truly be dwindled just by that move alone. Because, you have New England, you have Washington, which you're in the top 3. Why would you even consider Justin Fields at that point? Just move on and, get your options as you're certainly talking about. The only team that really makes, any sense is that, the teams that are in the back end of the draft, and possibly, so there's really only one team if you want to kind of strip it down a little bit. But, based on the quarterbacks he's had with Ben Roethlisberger and Kenny Pickett, does Mike Tomlin find himself in a situation where he would mind coaching a Justin Fields? I don't know. Because I will say I don't necessarily believe the rumor that came out. What was it, today or yesterday, that they're not interested in any quarterback in the draft, or like any options whatsoever. So they're kind of content with their room. I don't believe that necessarily. But you got Tampa, which they'll probably stick with Baker. That's kind of where things are leading.
I think they need to stick with Baker, and if they
I think the Mike Evans move triggered for them to, they're sticking with Baker.
Well, easy. We're not rehashing the quarterback field. We're not going to go do that again. We did that plenty last week. I just wanted to see if Pinky's mind had changed anything with the week removed from Fields. I believe the fact that you can even have a conversation that he's still on the roster come night 1 of the draft, and that is now within a realistic possibility, is a sign of how bad the Bears still are, and they continue to screw things up.
Okay.
So moving that into other free agent positions, the Bears have holes they need to fill. They've got cap space to do it. One of the bigger holes I think they could truly, if they wanted to, help their quarterback, whether it's Fields or Caleb Williams or somebody else, is giving continued offensive line help and an explosive running back, which I don't believe they have right now. I think they have solid running backs. I don't think they have an explosive running back. I still believe explosive running backs are game changers and worth having on a championship roster. I think that was proven in the Super Bowl with Christian McCaffrey. If he doesn't fumble there, the 49ers start almost looking like they could put the Chiefs away. So it just happens to be the wrong time for him to make one of his very rare few fumbles. But McCaffrey was still explosive. I don't think 49ers get there without him on the roster. There are some explosive running backs in free agency. I say we start there and look at the top one, which was just announced today, basically. The Giants aren't franchise tagging Saquon. He is going to be available on the open market. To me, that man right there, everybody should want to sign, especially if you're only paying $10 or $11 million a year, which I'm hearing is going to be the going rate if you want a long-term deal. Even if you get to 13, 14, start signing those contracts for someone like Saquon. I think him in Baltimore would be scary dangerous.
Saquon in Baltimore?
Because he gives another passing weapon option and an explosive run game that already is an explosive run game without a premier running back. I think J.K. Dobbins is premier, but the dude can't stay on the field and stay healthy for more than a game per season, it feels like, unfortunately.
High risk, high reward, baby.
Yeah. Saquon, though, is just, we know what he is. And at that cap hit of what he's going to be, realistically, I think it's completely worth it if you're a championship contending team.
You could make an argument Saquon would be the best running back in the league behind a decent O-line.
He's already in the conversation behind the Giants O-line. So, yeah, absolutely you could do that. Now, right behind him, though, is King Henry. Would we all agree that's probably the top 2 names in the free agent market for running backs? I think Derrick Henry's still got plenty of mileage left on the tires.
I would say
I might put Josh Jacobs above King Henry, just based on age.
Or Tony Pollard.
Be willing to go
or Tony
there.
Pollard.
No way.
No.
I might be willing to listen to Josh Jacobs, Pinky, but here will be my argument against that. I think people forget they keep seeing Henry's age and go 30. Oh, running backs fall off the cliff. and forget Derrick Henry didn't actually even touch the ball his first 3 years in the league because the Titans apparently didn't understand what a good.
And he's a mutant. So
right. He's
yeah.
also ginormous and
so
not the same.
Do I still think he's got some good football left in him? I absolutely do. I just don't know. I think you can get, for the money you're going to pay, I feel like you can get more tread off of Josh Jacobs. Now, if you need Derrick Henry for a year, like the Cowboys need Derrick Henry, that makes complete sense. Pay that man what he wants and get that done.
See, I know they're 4 years. Henry's 30 and Jacobs is 26, if I'm not mistaken. But to me, I feel like they have the same amount of viable years left. And maybe I'm a little overestimating what Henry has left in the tank. But I think he was drastically underutilized in the passing game in Tennessee. I think he's a lot better out of the backfield catching the ball than people realize. And I think he can still run with the best of them without question. So I think, given what Jacobs has seen with his injury history, he's had a lot of nicks with the Raiders. He hasn't necessarily missed a lot of games, but he's had a lot of nicks that have maybe
he's been really durable, bro.
He's been on the field, but I believe some of those injuries have limited some of his production his first couple of years. Last year, last year it went down a little bit. The year before it was really good.
He led the league in rushing.
Yeah,
in 22.
Yeah, but his first 2 years had some nicks, some things that kept him off the field or limited when he was on the field. Then he had a blow-up year. Then last year he was a little bit limited again.
I think last year had a lot to do with I'm playing on the franchise tag.
And it could be. You're absolutely right. It could be. It could be. And I love Jacobs. I think he's a beast. So we're kind of nitpicking here, right, to say who we go with, Henry or Jacobs. But I don't hate that at all. Who would you go as number 4, though, available here? Because I think there's a talent there that has some other injury things that scare some people. But potential-wise, I'm amazed his team didn't use him more last year.
I think I've seen it. It's DeAndre Swift.
Absolutely. Cheers, Pinky. We are totally on the same page here, my guy.
I just want to point out that based off of NFL, they've got Tony Pollard at 4 and DeAndre Swift at 6. So
and they're wrong.
That's cool with NFL. We're talking about realistic expectations and true talent.
I know.
Get on the same page, buddy.
But Tony Pollard's got over 1,000 yards over the last 5 seasons, right? And has still consistently shown up for the Cowboys. So I don't completely agree with that, Caleb, because he's still come in consistently clutch and doesn't have nearly as many miles as some of these other guys. Sorry.
You're not completely wrong, Robert. But he's not a guy that you want to give the ball to 15, 20, 25 times a game. He's the guy you want getting the ball 10 to 15 times a game.
But he was averaging 6 yards a carry last season, though.
Here's the thing, Robert. Look at it this way. You go look at the games where Tony Pollard was given heavy workloads. Those are usually some of his worst games, especially last year. If you go look at games last year where DeAndre Swift was given a heavy workload, those were actually some of his best games. So actually, DeAndre Swift actually got better as he got more touches, where Pollard actually looked like he slowed down as he got more touches. So to me, if I'm looking at that, and then you look at how Dallas had a weak running game, well, if my running back's wearing down late in the game, instead of starting to find his rhythm even more, that's a big issue for me. So I would rather go with the guy who I think is going to get better with more touches rather than the guy who I think is going to get weaker.
I have a question for the group here. I'm a huge Austin Eckler fan, coming from Western Colorado. Where's his best fit? He's in a really weird situation.
Back in LA with Jim Harbaugh.
That's not happening.
I truly believe that.
I could see that, but it's not happening.
Why not? He's going to have to take a giant haircut no matter where he goes.
He doesn't. Well,
I think he'd end up.
He's going to have to realize that, and then his best fit is going to be back there with Jim Harbaugh. That's what I believe is going to. It's just the market. He's going to have to just finally accept it and deal with it because nobody's going to pay him the money he's looking
for. But I think Harbaugh is going to go ahead and be like, you know what? We need to plan for Keenan Allen to be gone, Mike Williams to be gone, Eckler, you're gone. Like, I feel like he's going to come through and rebuild this team and get younger.
Yep. And he's probably going to draft Corum. If I'm being completely honest and realistic with you, I do believe Corum ends up in LA. So I don't think Eckler ends up in LA. You asked me where his best fit was.
Fair enough. Robert?
I personally think that he's going to end up either at the Eagles or the Raiders. I saw something the other day where it was talking about him going to the Broncos. I just don't buy that. Just don't.
They do like picking up the AFC West trash.
They like picking up the leftovers.
So
and,
I just have a hard time with that one, especially with some of the other pieces on the board.
I don't think they've got money to spend for that type of luxury, though.
That's why I think it's going to be between the Eagles and the Raiders, and at the end of the day, I think he ends up at the Raiders.
That's interesting. I see his best fit. Now he would have to take a haircut, and he would have to care about winning over getting paid. Kansas City is one of his best fits.
So that would be a huge haircut he would have to take.
It would be a huge haircut. But he would have the guy that's the run between the tackles guy getting the yards, and he's in there for pass protection and then getting the ball thrown to him on third down. The mismatch guy.
I have a hard time with that one, Pinky. I feel like that's a bit of a stretch.
I mean, honestly, Robert, if you think about best fit, if that's really what we're talking about, we're not looking at the team's cap situations or needs or things of that nature. Best fit for that player. Pinky's actually kind of right.
If we take money out of it, yeah, sure.
He's like the prototypical Andy Reid running back.
Sure. Because he's going to burst through and explode through those tackles and get those yards that they need to pick up when they need it. But
great out of the backfield receiving, protection for the quarterback. I mean, honestly, I didn't think about it that way, Pinky, but that is a really good fit for him. It would be. Damn, that would be a haircut.
But that would be, that'd be more about winning than about getting paid.
I'd be like, hey, you want to get paid like a third-round pick but win a championship? Come on over Austin Eckler.
I think that's why he's not going to be in LA is because he preferred getting paid, which I never fault the guy for getting his money.
I just don't see anybody paying him, especially after the production he had last year. The other guys we talked about still had production last year.
Let's be honest, man. Nothing looked good in that Kellen Moore offense last year.
It did not.
I don't think that's Eckler's fault, though.
And that old line.
I don't think it's Moore's fault either, actually. I think there's a giant issue with philosophy between Staley and everybody else in that organization.
What else you got, Caleb?
Any other running backs that stick out to anybody that are available on the free agent market? There's one more for me, and I've already mentioned him, but I was going to wait to talk about it.
I was going to say A.J. Dillon.
I didn't even think. Oh,
that is interesting.
And I would put A.J. Dillon at the Eagles.
Real quick,
That would be my pick for that one.
I think Austin Eckler's best fit, or at least where I would like to see him, would be Houston.
Okay.
Ooh.
And then probably best value. Let's see. I feel like because I talk about the Broncos too much, that's why I'm also not saying Eckler. But I think I would love to see Houston.
I like the Houston thought actually because Singletary is a free agent too, so Houston has to do something with their running back position.
I like Saquon for Houston.
Well, Saquon fits everywhere. Okay, like I like Cam thinking outside the box here a little bit. Pinky, give the man some credence.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Cheers.
Yeah. I do think the running back class in general is a little bit loaded. I think if you're looking at a lot of value, there's a lot of players on the market that do have a lot of value. And I think if I'm actually going to look strictly, let's just say Broncos related, and you're going to look at maybe a low cost, because the reason why I'm looking at it is let's just look at it through strictly a Broncos lens. Javonte Williams is on the last end of his deal. P. Ryan is on the last end of his deal. Obviously, it just is what it is. But Sean Payton has invested into that position. George Payton, as we know, is invested into that position. But the answer is not that I'm going with. The answer is not Alexander Mattison. That's not who I'm going with. It may disappoint you guys, but it may surprise you guys. But Antonio Gibson is one of the guys that I feel like could be one of the, in terms of value and possibly what, like I said, you guys may laugh at me, and that's fine.
Cam, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing. Pinky's heard me talk about this name since he came out of Memphis. So I'm chuckling because that's one of the two names I was about to discuss, and funny enough, relate it back to the Broncos. So cheers again, my guy. Continue.
I guess I do know ball. But I like the fit. The one thing that really just deters it for me with the Broncos is, the PTSD that we've seen in the past, which is, the fumbling issues, the turnovers. It's a big thing. I mean, he's had a lot of turnovers since being in the league, but when you think about how, Sean Payton can utilize him, I mean, the guy, when he was at Memphis, I mean, we're talking about a guy that lined up at wide receiver, a guy that lined up, out of the backfield. He was creative in a lot of different ways. Not
6'2", 220, I believe, or somewhere in that ballpark.
Super
bigger
fleet
guy than people believe.
Super fleet of foot, but Antonio Gibson, is certainly a name to watch. I feel like
he's an absolute value add wherever he goes, because you're going to do a lot of different things with him.
Here's why I love him, Cam, and I think that's a great name to bring up. So again, cheers. But the reason he's available, the reason he's going to be cheap is, he's got some turnover issues as well, and that has been a problem, but that is usually a fixable issue, especially if you go with the right people. What isn't is his bang-up history of missing games here and there, or not being healthy enough to perform at his premium levels that he needs to while he's on the field. And that continuously held him back from really being able to just take over that position at Washington and force their hand to not even draft a Brian Robinson. So he is insanely high risk, high reward for all the things you mentioned, including his injury history that he does have. He is an injury history guy to me because he's so banged up so often that it causes him to miss games on a regular basis. And I am a huge fan of Antonio Gibson and his potential. So I love the possible high risk, high reward that he could be for the Broncos. And that's my whole motto this offseason, isn't it, Pinky? High risk, high reward. Sam Darnold, let's bring him in. He needs to be the starting quarterback. High risk, high reward. Still young talent. Can you still get something out of it and move forward and rebuild on the go? Because that's what they're trying to do, so that's what you're going to have to find. The other name, and Pinky knows I've talked about this name since it came out of Ohio State, but the dude can't stay on the field, and I said it before, is J.K. Dobbins. The amount of talent that guy has shown when he actually is on the field and playing is absurd. But he's going to be cheap because he's missed almost every season. He's only played a handful of games. He's coming off of an Achilles tear. But from what we've seen of Achilles history lately, guys come back from that without many issues. And they look almost like they were before, especially when they're a year removed and then 2 years removed. So you could get Dobbins, you could get Antonio Gibson, you could get either guy on cheap contracts, on team-friendly, incentive-laden, team option year-type deals that would allow you to build on the fly and potentially have some guys that could be huge pieces going forward if they pan out correctly, or you move on from because they didn't cost you anything in the first place and you continue to find what you need in other places. So,
all right. Now we spent way too much time on running backs. So we got to move.
I was going to end
All right,
there, and we'll
let's
do other
go.
positions next week. So I feel like we're ending perfectly.
I feel like we're at a good point. Yeah, that was good.
Does that work for you, my guy? Are we good? Did you need something else? Were you looking to go somewhere else? What are we doing?
I mean, we've got
Let me
a
know.
As
lot.
long as domination's in the conversation, we're good.
Free
Robert's
agency
always
this
correct
weekend,
with that.
so if you
Keep that
want
in
to
mind.
mention anything, you want to do it now.
I mean, okay, you want to talk about some quick wide receivers?
Are there any?
I mean, that's all that really matters,
All
right?
right, hey, are there any? I
Quarterback,
don't
running
think there's
back, wide
anybody we're
receiver
talking
group.
about unless Cam has a take on here.
It's a pretty deep wide receiver room
Oh, okay.
in free
Well, then we
agency.
should definitely save that for next week then.
Well, I
It'll
don't
be
know.
over by then, but I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I figure we kind of, discuss.
I mean, the only guy worth anything that I see is Calvin Ridley.
Mm.
I mean, there's some guys that are like
But
good
when I
value role guys, but not
When
guys
I-
that are like number ones.
I mean, that's the whole reason why I'm thinking it's deep is because there's a lot of value.
But they're just folks that kind of help. They're not guys that are going to take you over the edge, though.
So I actually, cheers, Pinky. I agree. You're looking at second, maybe even in a lot of these cases, third guys, because you're looking at a Gabe Davis, a Marquise Brown as like the top 2, 3, 4 guys.
Well, I do like Marquise Brown.
I like him, but he's not a number 1. He may not even be a number 2 because you can't count on him to be on the field, and he doesn't necessarily take away the coverages as a true number 1 would. He needs somebody else on the field to do things for him, I still believe. So I don't see a guy here, and even Calvin Ridley, he disappeared quite a few games last year for Jacksonville.
Oh,
was that
tons
him?
of games.
Was that him? Was that the offense? Was it scheme? I don't know, but he still disappeared a lot. So I'll tell you the name that really jumps out to me. You guys might laugh. As Cam said before, quote him. But I do believe that there's a lot of untapped potential here. I think it's a Deebo Samuel light, if you will, in the right scheme. And that's Curtis Samuel, who I think can be on the cheaper end of these options. But in the right offense, you put him in, say, as you were speaking earlier, Pinky, Kansas City, and you let him be able to scheme in that Deebo Samuel type role in an Andy Reid offense. Woo-hoo! I think you could see something really dangerous, actually.
Oh, I would hate that because they would be really good. So I don't want any part of that.
I want to piggyback off of something just real quick because if we're going to talk about someone who is Deebo Samuel or, and I mentioned him a little bit as far as because the Broncos, like a huge theme for me has been reclamation projects, and that's why Sam Darnold has been my guy, for the Broncos to go after as far as reclamation projects. But if we're going to look at reclamation projects just as a wide receiver as a whole, and maybe in the same conversation, if you will, as a Sam Darnold, I'm going to, this is a shot in the dark. It's a low risk, possibly like high reward. It's the opposite of it.
Broncos have to do. So what is it, Cam?
I'm not even saying from the Broncos perspective. I'm saying
just in general. I got you.
Laviska Shenault. I think that Laviska Shenault is one that, depending on the right system, you put him in. I'll just, once again, I will just throw a team out there because of the way they use in space, the way that they've used their playmakers. You put him in Houston, you put him in Miami, you put him in Detroit, the way they operate in space.
Put him in San Francisco?
No, San Francisco, they've already got basically Deebo, if you will.
They could generate plays to get him open, though.
But
Cam,
again,
let me ask you this. Because I said coming out of the draft, I thought he would blow up. I've thought at every stop he's been at, I thought he would have the ability to blow up. And for one reason or another, he's shown flashes, but his flashes have not been nearly as consistent as a Curtis Samuel, which is why I mentioned him over Laviscus, amazingly enough. I think Samuel has shown real consistency on bad teams. Put him on a good team, he'll explode. I don't know if Laviscus will do that because I haven't quite seen any consistency from him. Do you have a sense of why? What might be holding him back on all the? He's had what 3 stops now.
Two, just 2.
Has it just been Jacksonville and
No.
Carolina?
Nope.
I thought he said more than that.
No, it's just been 2. But even then, like if you boil it down, he had 2 years with the Carolina Panthers under Dave Tepper. Something to consider. I mean, Dave Tepper and the Carolina.
But Curtis Samuel showed out under Ron Rivera and the mess of the former owner that shall not be named. So,
but also like wide receivers have not necessarily gone nuclear, except for maybe DJ Moore, because we all know that that's like
fair.
Moore.
Okay.
And also when he was with the Jacksonville Jaguars, we know about the whole Urban Meyer situation.
Sure.
So like he's never really been in a, let's just say, maybe a favorable head coach situation.
How old is he now? Because he was a little bit older when he got drafted, was he?
He's only 25. He's the same age of Antonio Gibson.
25. Okay.
And so I mean, like
I've loved his potential since I saw him in person in Lincoln, Cam. So I love that thought, and especially, I mean, I know you said not even necessarily for the Broncos, but damn, I mean, I am serious when I tell you, the Broncos are so unwilling to tear it down and rebuild properly that those are the type of players I believe they're going to have to find, which are true diamonds in the rough that have this insane potential, but never panned out somewhere else for whatever reason. And all of a sudden they're going to do it for you. And we've heard it 1,000 times in sports. That story is very common. It's just how many of those guys can you find all on the same team at one time?
Well, not to cheer you up a little bit from that regard, but the rumor I was just hearing within the last couple of hours is that the Broncos are not going to just trade Cortland Sutton, but they'll also trade Jerry Jeudy as well. So you're looking at probably like an entire.
The needle stays.
Doesn't matter.
Your needle. What do you get for them now? Maybe a fourth and
no. My point is though, you're talking about a hole in their room, and so but
I mean that was going to have to happen anyways though because of the way your GM put you in cap hell.
Sorry, I don't mean to divulge.
No, I get it. We could. So I like that idea with Laviska Shenault. Cam, dropped a little bit of a bomb with the Antonio Gibson, Laviska Shenault. I'm loving it. Names I
got another one.
So
I got another one too. And you can say maybe he was halted by quarterback play, or he was halted by maybe a dumb offensive coordinator who just doesn't know what he's doing, or just a dumb system where just players and people have gone to rot. And that is another one by the name of Darnell Mooney. I think that Darnell Mooney is one that I'm not saying he's wide receiver 1. I'm not saying he's wide receiver 2 necessarily, but I'm saying in the system where you're talking a crisp route runner, a guy who can possibly operate in space, not necessarily for the Broncos, but just someone that, if you get him in that same space and where he can operate and you can generate a lot of that, Darnell Mooney would be one of those guys. Maybe you move him strictly as a slot receiver, but like
if you could get him as your 2-3 guy and you have another guy that's equal as his 2-3 comparison, that could be dangerous 3 wide receiver sets for sure. I just feel like he seems like one of the guys that's going to feel like he's Pinky. You'll like this comparison. He's going to be this year's Christian Kirk, but I don't think he's as good as Christian Kirk. And he's not going to end up in as good as a situation as Christian Kirk.
And real quick, I see someone chiming in about Michael Thomas. As much as I would like to say Michael Thomas at his point in his career, it is what it is. I mean, he's been injured way too much, and he's just never been the same since his injury.
Overrated.
And,
overrated.
I don't want to say that there's a reason why they called him Slant Boy for nothing, but there's a reason why they called him Slant Boy for nothing.
That man doesn't play with the most accurate QB in the history of the NFL. His career is never close to the same.
But now, as far as a bombshell, what I could see happen, it's very risky on the standpoint of the It's very risky on the standpoint of would a team do it. That said, though, had the San Francisco 49ers won the Super Bowl, he would have been, there's no argument here, he would have been my vote for Super Bowl MVP. He's a restricted free agent, but he could be pricey, but he could be worth the risk, depending on, as far as, maybe even a team that could view him like in an upper echelon way, but it would be Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings is a restricted free agent, and you want to talk about a guy that is willing to do the dirty work. He's a willing, I'm going to block your butt off every single rep. I'm willing to fight for extra yards. I could see a team maybe overpay for.
He's not getting out of San Francisco.
So the reason I went kind of like ho-hum on that, Cam, is not because I disagree with you. It's because I honestly think he has the potential, and this might sound crazy, but I'm pretty good at those comments and statements, that he could be Stephon Diggs-ish. And I mean that in the sense that when Diggs
So you're
was in
agreeing with me in a sense?
What?
So you're agreeing with me in a sense?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think he has the potential. When Diggs was in Minnesota, a lot of people saw him as a 2. Mm-hmm. And when Buffalo paid him as a 1, there was a lot of people out there who went, what? And I think Juwan Jennings has the potential to be a really strong 2 to a really strong 1, a la 1A, 1, like a T. Higgins, Jamar Chase almost situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's shown some flashes where he could truly break out given the right situation.
Yeah. Only reason why I say it is because like that's such a out of the box one, truly, because he's restricted, and because we know that with restricted free agents, like do what teams want to overpay like that? Because when you're restricted, obviously teams want to place a tender, but even then, like the tender and the amount of money that is placed on said players, not a lot of money. And so really the question is just like, if they put a first round tender on him, are you willing to give up a first round pick, if you will, for Juwan Jennings? That's ultimately the question.
He's not going anywhere.
I like the thought though. As a dark horse,
I think he could be
to do some really crazy things. I like that.
I think he can be a player because he always shows out whenever he's on the field.
The important thing also of note for free agency is that it's an offer sheet situation there. So he would have to sign an offer sheet, and then San Francisco would ultimately have to decide whether or not to match it or not match it. And if they decide to match it, then you're signing him to that deal, and welcome to being paid almost like a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2.
All right.
Absolutely.
Last
Final
one of the night.
Okay.
Last one.
What?
Will somebody help everyone else and sign Chris Jones to a big deal?
No, because I think him and the Chiefs are going to work out whatever they need to work out in order for him to come back and be part. I think they're legit serious about running it back for that 3-peat, dude. And I think they will find a way for those main pieces to make sure they are there for that situation, regardless of what it does to their future. And I've said it before, and I'm all good with it. You want to mortgage your future for the next 10 years for a championship now? Do it. And what's crazy is the Chiefs over the last 2 years winning championships have put themselves in a position now where they could do a all-in for 1 year mortgage,
mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't be their only one. It would be their 3rd in a row, which is absurd that they've been able to manage their situation to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that ability, and I think it'll happen. I think they'll find a way to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, as much as, I like to get ridiculous on social media, but I promise, I'm reasonable, and there's no way he's leaving Kansas City. I mean, you're talking about, I hate to say it, you're talking about the New England Patriots 2.0 situation. You're talking about a situation where it's a dynasty. You're talking about a team that is willing for players
doing
to
something that's never been done before in the history of the NFL,
you're
as
in
it stands now, modern era NFL.
you're in a situation where players in free agency will take less to join you. And so meaning as scary of a thought as it is, meaning you will have a wide receiver one on the market take less to go play with Patrick Mahomes at some point in his career. It will happen. Like it will absolutely happen. So I absolutely could see it. And whether that's a 1-year deal or almost, I guess you could make it in a comparison, but it's almost like a 2-year deal, but like, almost 30 million a year to a certain extent, like 2 years for 60, 2 for 80 if you want to pay him 40 million a year.
They'll basically, I think, pay him what the franchise tag number is for the next 2 years, and both parties will be happy. And whether the second year is player option or team option, I don't quite have a feel for that yet. But I think that's about what you're looking at for the deal.
100%. But it's funny you did bring up the defensive line, though, because that is a really interesting group, because you do have Chris Jones, you have DJ Reader, Fletcher Cox is on the market, Sheldon Rankins is on the market. Christian
Wilkinson is about to show up on the market by all accounts.
Yep. Actually, he is on the market. Yeah. So Christian
has that been announced now? They won't franchise tag him.
Yeah, they won't.
They had to do it by 2:00 today.
I missed that one. I just didn't see that one for some reason.
So the defensive tackle market is really deep, and I mean, so if there's one guy on the market, I will say that is to kind of keep the youth movement going a little bit and everything. I could see a team overpay necessarily and overpay him to be a starter, but he's a fascinating one. He was a dominant defensive lineman coming out of college. And I'm really curious to see what his market will be, but that would be a Javon Kinlaw. He's one that I'm kind of curious about.
He was pretty young coming out of college, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in 20s. But I mean, you got guys like T.R. Tart, obviously Quentin Jefferson. But he's 30s. But Christian Wilkins, yeah, it's another case where you do have some top heavy talent, but some decent enough value with the defensive line. So if you're a very savvy team or a rich team, you could possibly sign a defensive lineman to a very expensive deal and then double dip a little bit on defensive line and rebuild your defensive line in free agency.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Final thoughts, gentlemen. Robert, you had a lot to say tonight. I need you to calm down just a little bit, ever so slightly. Sit back in your seat and relax. Give me a final thought, sir.
Definitely looking forward to how everything shakes out over the next couple of weeks. I'm very, very interested in the Kirk Cousins thing to see where he ends up. I thought really the Vikings were going to pull for him, but to see him actually go to the Falcons will be very exciting. Running back situation is going to be very interesting. We talked about a lot of things coming up. And of course, Justin Fields. Really looking forward to that and see how that whole storyline is going to shake out for everybody. Otherwise, the nonsense side of things, Shogun's happening. That's exciting. I think in the next week or so, Invincible is back. So, moving forward.
Word. I love it. Cam, final thoughts, good sir.
No, it's going to be good. We're actually going to be doing more of a free agency conversation, so it's probably good I didn't maybe dive in a little bit too much tonight. But there probably will be some names that I mentioned, tonight that I may bring up tomorrow. But should be a fun show. It's going to be a free agency primer with 2 guys from Mile High Huddle with the names of Lance Sanderson and Carl Dummler. So it'll be a fun show. Like I said, it's a free agency primer. Tune in 7:30 Mountain Time, 8:30 Central.
Those 2 guys know their stuff.
It's always a blast to be on here and talk ball with you and go Big Red.
Pinky, final thoughts, good sir.
Man. Well, the Broncos are not going to be players at free agency, so we won't have to worry about that. But It should be fun. This is the time where lots of players get paid. You know, there's a lot of money thrown around this weekend. That's fun. That's exciting. It also, you know, this is and the best time about this part of the year. Also, why I love the draft. There's so much hope. There's so much hope of like, hey, we can get better. We can do this. We can do that. We can draft well. We can get better. That's always a good time of year.
I like it. I like it. I will say two things. Sticking with football, I love this time of year because we get to do all the what ifs. And I love that being a fake fantasy GM and talking about what I think would be the right move for the right reason with the right pieces and the right situation. And it's just fun. Like I've just always found that outside the game chess part of the business really fun. It's just always intrigued me and interested me. So this is the season for it, all the way through the draft. And we have a good time with it every year, and I love it. The second thing is basketball is ramping up quickly, ladies and gentlemen. And if you know anything about us, you know I love my round ball. So start paying attention because we're going to be talking about it more and more and more. And from there, as always, if you have those opportunities to spend with your loved ones, family, friends, inner circle, cherish them. Do not take advantage of them. Do not waste them. We love all of you. We appreciate the support. We can't say it enough. Can't ask for anything more. If you have anything you want to know from us or ask us, reach out. Appreciate you all.
Always available.
Love you, boys.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out.